So welcome to this session where I'm going to be exploring this question: what is hindering your recovery? This is a question that clients and people who aren't clients ask me, and they also want to know what can speed recovery up. So if you are watching live, do just put a hello in the chat, say hi, let me know that you can see me and hear me. So in this video, just to be clear, I'm not going to be talking about medication because I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to be talking about supplements because I'm not a nutritionist. Okay, I am going to focus on mind-body approaches. I'm going to share some pretty extraordinary information that illustrates what I'm about to share and the importance of it. Okay, so my name is Simon Pimenta, if you don't know me, from CFS Explored. I had CFS for 8-9 years, and I went from being bedbound to being able to work again full-time, playing sport, living an active life. So I'm going to share stuff that helped me get over ME/CFS and information that I hope is helpful to people with ME/CFS, long COVID and related conditions. So Diane says hi. Hi Diane, and Annie says hi, thanks for letting me know you're there. So everything I share with love. You have to decide whether the information I share is relevant to you and your situation. If it's not, that's fine. I hope you find solutions. If it is, then I hope you think about how you can implement what you learn. So the first thing that I think is important to focus on is mindset. Okay, and in particular, our beliefs. Our beliefs are massively important. A couple examples of that. You're already familiar with the placebo effect. The placebo effect is the effect produced by the power of belief. You can give someone an inert sugar tablet, but if someone believes it has medicinal properties, in some people in that control group, they will experience benefit. Okay, there's a medically documented case of a woman with a rose allergy, and she was shown a plastic rose by her doctor and she had an allergic reaction. And I've talked to clients about allergies. I had one client who had an allergy to horses and rabbits, and we were sitting in my clinic, and as we were talking about it, she was asking me questions about allergies. She said, oh, actually I can feel some of my allergic response happening. I said, what does that tell you? She says, well, it seems like there is a psychological aspect to it. Now, obviously, just to be clear, if you've got a nut allergy, it's really important that you keep taking, carrying your pen with you, etc. Okay, but I had hay fever from the age of 6, and when I trained to be a hypnotherapist, we learned a process. I used it on myself, forgot about it, and it was only about a year and a half later I realised my hay fever had completely disappeared, and I have not had it since. That was in 2007. Sometimes I've had slight tingles, and I've said to myself, did that really work? And I've felt these tingling feelings coming back if it's in the summer, but then I just do the process on myself for a minute and the symptoms have gone. Okay, and I also had this experience of a chap who was a big muscly rugby player who was fitting a big sheet of glass in my wet room, and he had hay fever, and I explained to him that it's an overreaction of the immune system. It's a bit like sending in the army to collect rubbish. And I told him the story of the woman with the plastic rose, and I told him a few more things about the immune system and allergies. And I said, look, I'll work with you if you like. I haven't done it before. I won't charge you. I'm interested to see what results we get. He said, I'll give you a call. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. And then he came back to finish the job. And he said, oh, actually, sorry I didn't call, but something weird happened. At the end of the day, my hay fever disappeared. And he hasn't had it. I actually spoke to him 3 years ago. So this was in 2008. So that was, doing the maths, 12 years ago. And he said, from when I spoke to him, he said, I still haven't had hay fever. Okay, so there's another study where Alia Cram from Stanford University split people into 2 groups, and she showed each group a different video about stress. One video was saying that stress is bad. The other video was saying that stress is good. In the group that had been shown the video that stress is bad, 5 weeks later, they had more health symptoms than the other group. So what does that tell you about the power of our beliefs? If you have just joined, feel free to say hello. So let's talk a bit more about beliefs. What beliefs do you have about recovery? Feel free to pop them in the chat. If you're watching the replay, just put hashtag replay. But what beliefs do you have about recovery? Do you believe recovery is possible? Now, it's completely understandable if someone has had the condition for a long time that they might lose hope and belief. But I've worked with people I remember working with one woman, I think she was in her 70s or 80s. I think she was in her 80s actually. And she'd had fatigue-related issues since her 20s. And she sent me a long letter. It was 8 sides of A4 telling me all the stuff she'd been doing since she did the training. Okay, so some people do have the belief it's possible for others to recover, but they doubt whether they can recover. So that's the first thing, to just consider what your beliefs are around recovery. Do you believe progress is possible? I've worked with people who doubted recovery. 2 of them have run a marathon, and that was their stated goal before we started working together. When I asked them, what are your goals? They both said, one of my goals is to run a marathon. They both did that. I worked with someone recently who had the belief that they couldn't recover and they couldn't make progress. I did say to them, I have the belief that you can make progress and recovery is possible. Okay, I can't guarantee it, but if it's not impossible, it is possible. Okay, and so far we've ticked the progress box. This person has got significant evidence that they can make progress. And so now they've signed up to working on recovery. Okay. Next thing, excuse me, do you believe that you are deserving? Sometimes I work with people and they have a belief that they're not deserving of health, of recovery, of a good life. So we have to do some work around that to find out what is driving that belief. And the thing about beliefs is we can change them. What are your beliefs about how recovery happens? So some people have the model that the answer is medical. So they believe that there's going to be some gene therapy or some medication, so some medical intervention which is going to get them back to full health. Yet there are other people who have a completely different view. They have the view that they take a more integrated approach to health, and they believe that there are things that they can do to support their healing. Okay, so Annie says, I am making progress. So yes, fantastic. That's great to hear, Annie. Sometimes people have beliefs around recovery that recovery is a bit scary. Okay, and again, this is not relevant to everybody. I remember chatting to someone who said recovery is a bit scary because I got sick because of the stresses in my life and I wasn't setting boundaries because I found that difficult. And if I get well, I'm going to be confronted with those kinds of situations again. I find that a bit scary. So I said to this person, what would it be like if you had resources to deal with those situations more effectively? And they said, yeah, that'd be good. That'd be okay. And so they were kind of ready to kind of go on the path to work towards recovery. And I recognised that when I had mecfs, it was a bit of a get out clause. If there was situations where, let's say I was with people and I'd got a bit fed up, wanted a bit of a break, I would just say I'm going to go and have a rest. Okay. And I know that again, when I got sick, there was stuff going on in my life that I wasn't really addressing, including challenging people And as I started to recover, I had to start addressing those issues, because otherwise they would have been stressors that would have hindered my health. Okay, so that's just something to consider. It's a question I ask people when I start working with them. Are there any benefits for you being sick? It's a strange question, but people give interesting answers. Some people give a flat no, there's no benefits. Some people say, oh, well, actually there are some benefits. And so we look at what resources they need in order to let go of that. The next thing in terms of your mindset, your beliefs. What are your beliefs about your resourcefulness? So some people do have that belief that, you know what, I've got it within me. If other people can recover, I'm just as smart, I'm just as tenacious as those people, and therefore it is possible for me. Emma says, I think that recovery needs to be holistic and person-centered. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important point. So thank you for making it. So just consider that. What are your beliefs about your own resourcefulness? Okay, so that's the first area that I want to talk about. Second area is individual factors. So what are the personal factors that are individual to you? So for instance, some people recognise that they've experienced trauma, either what Gabor Mate, trauma therapist, calls, he's a doctor as well, calls big T trauma, abuse, overt abuse, and then there's small t trauma, which is more to do with neglect, that kind of thing. Okay, but our experience of trauma can result in nervous system dysregulation. If you look into the ACE studies, ACE, adverse childhood experiences, what that shows is that people who've experienced those adverse childhood experiences are more likely to develop health issues. Okay, some signs of trauma are getting triggered easily, hypersensitivity, adaptive behaviours, becoming a people pleaser, worry, anxiety, being an overachiever, having poor boundaries, which can result in patterns like boom and bust. Other patterns being very impatient, self-critical towards yourself, being resistant to change. Change is scary, acceptance is scary, because that means letting go of control, and if you're used to being in control, then that can be challenging. Okay, so consider, are there any behaviours and traits that I've mentioned that are hindering your recovery? Feel free to comment in the chat if you wish. Are there any things that I haven't mentioned that you feel are hindering your recovery? So stresses that you've got in your life. For instance, there might also be environmental factors. For example, mold. If you've got mold in your house and your body isn't functioning well, then you're going to be more sensitive than, let's say, someone who's in robust health. Obviously, it's still really good to get rid of mold, because mold is not good for our health. If someone is in an environment where there are dysfunctional relationships, that can be a factor. I've worked with people where that has been the case. They've experienced dysfunctional relationships, been in relationship with someone who's shows narcissistic tendencies, and so we've looked at strategies for dealing with that. I was talking about someone today about how they respond to someone who's being unkind. And one of the strategies that I suggest people adopt is, if someone is being unkind, saying unkind things, you just don't respond. Someone in my family, when someone says something that is kind of a bit out there, this chap just raises an eyebrow. That's all he does. That's the only part of his body that responds. Okay, doesn't say anything, just doesn't dignify the comment with a response. Okay, so third piece is to do with resources. Do you feel like you have the right tools to help you regulate your nervous system, heal trauma, help you process your, oops, sorry, gone to the wrong place, your sensations. So we can experience physical sensations, i.e. symptoms, and for some of us, we have not got the capacity to just be with those sensations. So we tend to go to our head and create thoughts, beliefs. For example, we might distract ourselves, we might catastrophize, say, oh, I've got a symptom again, I'm never going to get well. We criticize ourselves for having that symptom. This is going to cause stress, this is going to hinder recovery. Some of us also haven't built the capacity to deal with our emotions. So again, we go to our head and we create those responses. Those thoughts result in feelings. So the difference between an emotion and a feeling, an emotion comes from the body, feeling comes from our thoughts and beliefs, okay? And let's say someone is feeling the emotion of sadness. They might go to their head, and because they're feeling sad, they might say, you know, there's something wrong with me, I shouldn't feel this way, I shouldn't be feeling this emotion. Now they're feeling a bit stressed, and their strategy for dealing with that stress is to binge on Netflix or binge on biscuits. So that's the behavior, okay? So what's happening there is their emotions are driving their behavior. There were times when I had ME/CFS when it was really difficult for me to sit with the physical sensations and actually just navigate those sensations, take care of myself. So I would distract myself, and that would just end up me feeling more tired, more exhausted, digging myself deeper into a hole, okay? What about grief? Well, grief is another example, Diane. Grief, I have made a video about grief, so check that out. I talk about the stages of grief, which, you know, it's useful to understand there are various stages that we can go through. But again, the issue is, have we got the capacity to sit with that grief? I did a video on this literally last week or the week before, where I talked about emotions and navigating emotions. So do check out that video as well. All right. But what I'd like you to consider is, what would it be like to be able to just allow yourself to feel those feelings, knowing that they're not going to last forever. They are going to pass. But also, and again, I talk about this in the video, so maybe I'll link that video below this one. Do remind me if necessary. You know, that I've lost my train of thought there. What was I going to say? It'll come back to me, okay? But yeah, I'm going to let it go, and it'll come back. I'll post it at some other point if necessary. Just completely lost my train of thought there. Okay, so it might be that we need to break patterns that don't support healing. So Diane, if you've got any supplementary question there, feel free to post it. That might trigger my brain. If I haven't quite answered your question, do let me know. Yeah, so we might need to break those patterns that don't support healing, breaking the boom and bust pattern. So in order to do that, we need to understand what's driving that pattern. There's an emotion, okay, or a trait, a behavior. Maybe we've developed the perfectionist trait or the overachiever trait. I must get this done. I have to get it done properly. I can't leave things undone, okay? And that is an adaptive behavior in response to trauma. Okay, might be we need to work on changing our beliefs. If I am a perfectionist, there's some beliefs around that. Okay, might be we need to do some work and have tools to help us do work around building our self-esteem. We might need to establish habits that are going to support healing. So for example, if you do have the tendency to boom and bust, number one, we need to identify the drivers. We ultimately need to identify some strategies to help us break that pattern. Okay, And one simple behavioural strategy is to use a timer. But obviously you've got to be able to navigate the emotions around stopping as opposed to keeping going because you want to get it done. And what can help you do that is being really clear on your wildly important goal. Okay? People often get caught up in what I call their mildly important goal. So the mildly important goal is to finish that task, tidy that room. Whereas the wildly important goal is perhaps to get healthy so you can live a full life, spend time with the people you love. Okay? If that's your wildly important goal and you think about that before and whilst you're doing the task and when your timer goes off, are you more likely to stop because you're focusing on that rather than the mildly important goal? So Diane says, I'm scared of the feelings of grief and try to avoid it. Okay, so that goes back to what I was saying. Let me just go back to this. It might be at the moment that you haven't got the resources to help you navigate those emotions. Okay, so if that's the case, then the first step is working on building a strong relationship to your physical body, being comfortable in your physical body, being able to navigate physical sensations. Because when we create the wiring in our brain so that we can navigate the physical, then we build the capacity to deal with the emotion. And one of the things I teach people, trying to think which week it is. It's in, I think it's about week 7 or 8. I teach people how to, let's say, for instance, you're wanting to navigate grief, how to do that in a really, really gentle, safe way. Okay, so we don't have to do it all in one go. All right, and that can be overwhelming for some people, but we can learn how to access resourceful states and then just experience a little bit of that thing that's more challenging. Okay, so I've shared a bit of a shopping list, but I believe that there is a core shift that underpins all the mind-body work that, you know, we might do to support our healing. This is the core work I've been doing over the last few years and teaching people how to do this. And that is learning to connect with your true, brilliant, authentic self. Okay? What I invite you to consider is that part of you is always there, but it's a bit like the blue sky. Sometimes it's obscured by our wounds. And that might mean that you don't have a strong connection to that part of you, but it is part of you. And for most people, that part of you has shown up many times in your life where you have just responded to a challenging situation in a resourceful way. And when you can tap into that part of you, your true, authentic, brilliant self, then you have greater capacity to take care of the part of you that is wounded. Okay, and that is transformational. You know, as I say, I've been doing that work myself. It's kind of taken things to another level. I learned brain training, but this is a whole kind of another level of work. And I think it's absolutely vital that we are guided by that part of you that is wise. And so many of us learn, and let me know in the comment if this applies to you, learn to doubt ourselves, learn to doubt our emotions, you know, but you've had many situations where you feel a bit uncomfortable, let's say, with a reaction, and you're not immediately clear about why you're uncomfortable. However, your nervous system knows that something isn't right, that you don't feel safe. Okay, so we can learn to use that information to navigate life, navigate the challenges, to help support our healing. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. If you've got any other questions, then let me know. If you're watching this video and you're not part of my Facebook group, I'll pop the link below. It's a supportive community. You'll get access to lots of free resources. If you'd like to explore coaching, want more help, want to go a bit faster, then get in touch. I'm happy to have a free chat with you to help you identify your need, whether there's some way in which we can work together. If I feel like we're not a good fit, I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. But if I feel we are, then we can explore that further. So if you've got any questions, let me know. Pop it in the chat. If not, maybe let's pause and we'll do a very brief relaxation. If that sounds good, put a yes in the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so if you like, we'll do a brief relaxation. Emma says yes. All right, so I invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. I invite you just to take a breath in, breathing in through your nose, into your belly, breathing out of your nose. As you breathe in and out, just allow your out breath to be a little longer than your in breath. As you breathe in and out, I invite you just to consider that you have that conscious ability to make choices to support your healing. So in the course of the day, if you decide to just pause for 1 minute, maybe after you've been to the bathroom or when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, to just sit down and focus on your breath, or do a body scan where you just gently feel the sensation, maybe tense part of your body, then release it and work through the body. If you do that just for a minute, once, 3 times, 5 times a day, you're just starting to build a resource for yourself. I know a chap who's a therapist, and he's so practiced at doing the body tense and release that he can, within like 30 seconds, relax his body. So just remember that you've got the ability in a moment to make a conscious decision to do something to support your healing. So when you're ready, I invite you just to actually, either you can carry on just resting with your eyes closed, or when you're ready you can just open your eyes and bring yourself back. So if you're watching live or watching the replay, thanks for watching. Do leave a comment. Your feedback is always welcome and useful, and it might help somebody else. So keep going. Wishing you great health. Bye for now.